Are you ready?
Thrilled to be here.
All right, Ryan Dalton. Yeah, the people love you. Give them a wave. Yeah, okay.
Hello. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, and
Championships.
that's enough. Everyone, shut
Oh,
up. Okay. All right. Ryan Dalton is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wannabe Critic podcast. We have officially resurrected this handle on the Wannabe Network, and if you're watching or listening, we greatly appreciate it. So, um, Ryan, here you are. I can't believe it. How long has it been? What was
too
the
long.
last thing? What was the last thing we did together?
Boy. That's a good question. I know we did a bunch of the movie podcasts. I don't remember which was the last one. Um, was it maybe no, it couldn't have been that long ago. I was wondering if it was the last Star Wars movie. But I feel like we did some after that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we did Control a while
We
back
did,
too,
yeah, we
right?
did Control.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I don't re-
It's it all that
it's
time
been a
kind of
minute.
blurs together. Yeah,
And
it really
yeah,
has.
and we've both been
Yeah.
going hard at our respective projects ever since.
Yes, it's crazy. We were just talking off mic about how like you have those friends that like are creatives alongside you because I feel like in every medium and every space, it's very easy to get like competitive, whether you realize it or not. Like you get kind of competitive, like in terms of like creativity, and I think like eventually we do all grow out of that. But you're not one of those friends. Like I feel like I can tell you anything I'm doing creatively, whether if it's too ambitious or not, and you're like, yes. That sounds like you're like just on board.
Yeah.
So I love having you on. I want to talk about what you've been up to, of course, and we're going to talk about Mile 135, which is your podcast. Um, and kind of you are a busy man, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm ready to hear about your travels. So, for those of you who don't know Ryan, Ryan, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ryan Dalton. I'm an author by trade, and I also do some voiceover stuff as well in various capacities. And then I recently launched my own podcast after being a guest on multiple podcasts and learning from a lot of other good hosts. I finally found a concept that I thought felt unique to me, so I thought I'd give it a shot. And yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. And
Yeah,
then
and so
yeah, the writing continues as well.
your most recent book, which we've talked about before, this last adventure, that's your
Mm-hmm.
most recent work. You're obviously, what is it the saying? A writer writes always, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I know there's some ideas that you're not quite ready to talk about yet, but we're excited for the time where you can talk about those things. And I haven't finished this last adventure yet, just because life. But what I have
Um,
read, obviously, I do love. Um,
oh, thank you.
so obviously, Ryan, you've been on the show lots of times. You've been on Game Club. You've been on Keeping It Real. You've been on the Wannabe Critic podcast before, and it's good. I love this feeling. I'm in a new place, but it's good to see that I don't know, like seeing your background just takes me back to a good time.
Uh,
Whenever I would look at the screen and be like, "There's Ryan," like his cool background and all that. But here we are. Um, so we're gonna talk a little bit about today. What you've been up to in terms of entertainment. You have your own podcast. I feel like when we have our own podcast, sometimes we appreciate we appreciate podcasts or appreciate creating podcasts that are completely different than what we would usually listen to. And I think that's what you've done here with Mile 135. But we're also going to talk about some music and what movies, the state of movies, if you've been playing any video games, and then one of our key topics today is going to be around AI. So I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, and I'm sure I'm
I have
talking
some
really
thoughts.
fast.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
cool.
sure you. Yeah, so I'm talking really fast, but I'm just trying to keep it going,
We're
do
gonna
my
set the
thing.
stage.
That's right. Let people know what they can get into. And for those of you that might want to skip some of this stuff, timestamps are going to be down there, of course, as always. Ryan Dalton, thank you. So let's start with the easy one, right? I'm going to throw you a softball with
Hmm.
the podcasts. Are you a podcast listener these days?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So real quick, give me like a top three. Like, what do you like your top three favorite
Oh
shows
boy.
these days?
So man, I bounce around a lot. It really depends on my mood, and my moods tend to shift. Um, I listen to podcasts exactly like I listen to like I play games. Um, I'll go super hard on one, and then I won't touch it again for a year, and then I'll go super hard on it again.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I
so
I go down a similar path totally.
yeah, so it's interesting because I listen to relatively few podcasts about writing. You would think that that's all I would absorb, but the podcast to me, I tend to listen to it when I'm exercising or traveling around, and I tend to like something that um is not like a class, just something that I could have fun with. So I actually listen. I'm a huge comedy nerd, so I listen to a lot of either straight up comedy podcasts or podcasts that maybe like interview shows but have a comedic bent to them. I do listen to a couple of like TV show rewatch podcasts. Um, I would say probably my number one that's almost an instant listen to me is Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I love that one. I'm a huge Conan O'Brien fan, and even if it's a guest that I don't know, I'm still probably going to have a blast with it. Just very funny. Um, if I'm in a serious learning mood, hardcore history is pretty amazing. That's especially good for long road trips because each episode is like 4 hours long. Um, and if you're a history nerd, that one's really fun. I'm looking at my list now. I've got a ton saved up. It's just like I said, I bounce around. Um, comedian that I really like named Mike Birbiglia, stand-up comedian, has a show called Working It Out, which is fun because it's comedy, but it's also process. So he has someone on, usually another comedian, but sometimes it's actors or writers or whatever. And they talk about, in addition to just talking about, what they want to talk about, they talk about the process of what they're creating. And especially if it's another comedian, they'll actually throw out some jokes or whatever that are not finished, that they're working on, or they have like early versions of or concepts of. And so you can hear their process of like how they go about developing jokes and coming up with the ideas and getting them to be a finished product. And so I find it fascinating to learn like kind of the craft of something that I'm not involved in at all. It's just
Yeah,
really interesting.
same. I agree. Like you feel the need to like really immerse yourself in like learning something and
Hmm.
like wrapping your mind around how something can be done. Like there for a while I was watching like how it's made videos. And yeah, like
Hmm.
I think that's like a really like interesting quality to have where it's like, yeah, I just want to learn stuff about stuff, like all the stuff, and yeah,
Absolutely.
so I can totally relate to that. Yeah, it's funny when you mention like it's nice whenever professionals, especially comedians, like will kind of let you know how the sausage is made a little bit and let you know basically like, yeah, you're funny, but like you're also really, really, really lucky,
Yeah.
And like I think about Tom Segura and his podcasts, the stuff he does. Like I kind of get that air about him. It's like he's funny jokes. He will sometimes like talk about like it's like yeah, you can tell there's like the workings of a joke there that he's thought about already. You know what I mean? And those
Yeah,
types
and
of things.
how much incredibly hard work and it takes in a long time, and you see the different styles of the different comedians. Like this was on a different show, but I picked up on it. I was like, oh, I could relate to. It was the Jerry Seinfeld show, the comedians in cars getting coffee.
Oh yeah, yeah, right,
So I I realized watching one of those episodes, like, oh, Jerry Seinfeld and I work similarly, just on
right,
completely different
yeah.
things because he in one episode was had another comedian on, and that comedian was floating a couple of jokes, and Jerry like was able to slice it into pieces and elements and dissect and analyze each element and say, well, if you did this here, rearranged those two things, did this other hook, did this, this thing, it would be a funnier joke that flowed better and it's more internally consistent. And the other comedian was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Um, and watching that, I thought, I don't do comedy, but that's exactly how I analyze stories. So,
Right.
yeah, that was fun.
There's another way, like appreciating that if you can give a lot of stuff, like it goes both ways. Appreciating that someone solved the creative puzzle on their own, but also giving them not a better way to do it, but a another way to do it.
Hmm.
And yeah, maybe like someone like Jerry Seinfeld says, like, no, this is probably the better way because of this, X, Y, and Z. Then yeah, like as a creative, if you're willing to collaborate, right? Like it wasn't just Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Like it was Paul and John and George and Ringo, like all contributing these ideas, and Yoko again. Apparently, no, I'm just kidding. Um, I'm sorry.
Well, that's the end of the
Uh,
podcast. Good night, everybody.
yeah, honestly, like you don't want the product that's only had one set of hands on it. Really, in my opinion, like you want to have it well loved and received first before I think you put it. Sometimes professionally type thing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
any good novel that you've ever read passed through a lot of hands and it had a lot
Right.
of feedback. So, yeah, nobody who does something good does it alone.
Yeah. It's true. True that. Awesome. Thank you for that on the podcast. So, on Instagram, which you can follow him at what's your Instagram handle?
Brian Dalton.
Ryan Dalton on Instagram. On your stories you always post like, writing soundtrack for the day,
Yeah, I
things
do
like
that a
that. Like
lot.
what's your and I appreciate that because, when I'm trying to get in a mindset for something specific, I might have a certain type of music on, and like the movies I might watch only might be a certain type of movie, and then the games I play, like it all kind of coincides with the general theme that I might be, whatever it may be, a song, a story, whatever. Um, do you find that to be kind of something kind of similar? Like,
Well, definitely with music, that's a huge part of my creative process. Um, and it's more like to me as far as like anything else creative, like TV or movies or the books or things. Um, I do find that regardless of genre, if I encounter something that I feel is really awesome, it's whatever genre it is, it energizes me to get back to the thing that I'm currently creating because I get a rush out of experiencing something that I think is truly great. Um,
right,
and so it makes me just want to sit down and to keep doing my own thing. Um, the music part is what is directly involved creatively for me. Yeah, I've got soundtracks for all of my projects. Um, Usually they consist of maybe a song or two that are sort of just like overall themes. Just kind of evoking the feeling of the whole story. Um, like certain scenes will have their own song, certain characters might have a theme song. I've had characters, story elements, scenes birth completely out of hearing a song that hit me the right way at the right moment. And it really intertwines itself with how I create stories. And so an early part of the process is I start putting together an early playlist, and they sort of feed on each other. Like I come into creating the playlist knowing the ideas that I have for a story. As I put it together, it opens the way to create more ideas, and then that feeds into refining the playlist. Um, and then it continues to refine like as I work through the story, so it's kind of like a constant companion. And then by the time I'm done with the story, that's when I have like the completed playlist I still keep them
right.
around. Actually, they're fun to dive back into, and it really like the right song will get me right back into a story moment.
That's yeah. That totally makes sense. It's like you can remember how you felt when you came up with a certain idea,
Oh yeah.
based off a certain song, and it's like, oh man, I forgot about that, which inevitably takes you back to a certain time in your life, and like that's a whole other bag of worms. Like it all comes full circle eventually, with
Absolutely.
storytelling. It seems like, um, and having you on the show and talking about those things and really having you be able to, it's like, yeah, like these are the things that are done to make like this is how it's done actually. Like I've done it. Like no one's writing a good book solo and like not having, lots of hands on it, and that type of thing. Um but like with music particularly, you said something that was interesting about it being a companion.
Hmm.
And it makes me wonder, like, if you spend so much time for your job listening to music, do you somewhat avoid it in your quote unquote like free time? Like, or does there bands that like you will still like, will you still seek out time to like listen to your favorite bands type thing?
Oh yeah. Well, because I'm a musician too. So, I practice, I got to get my vocal practice in and yeah, I still, yeah, it's one of those things where I like things of a lot of different genres, so it can be a little overwhelming. Um, but I typically have the stuff that I listen to just for pleasure. And then there's other stuff I listen to that is good for vocal practice. And then I have stuff that is for creativity. And there is some overlap between all of them. But there is also some segmentation there. Like for instance, the vast majority of my writing soundtracks are instrumental. Occasionally, there will be a song with words in it. It's unusual. Just because if I'm writing with the music in the background, typically having lyrics is going to throw off my rhythm. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. Now it's not always the case, especially like if I have an action scene and there's a song that really fits, that's just kind of like a high octane scene. If I crank it loud enough, then I will sometimes just kind of stop hearing the words and it becomes noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could do it that way. Or if there's a song that I'm determined to have kind of because it really nails what I'm going for, I may listen to it a bunch before I write a particular scene, and then I'll turn it off and then go write the scene, and then have something that's a little more like white noise in the background as I actually do the writing. Um, but yeah, I'm always gonna love music for a variety of reasons, and um, have different playlists for different things I'm doing.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Like it's interesting that it's literally part of your something practical is part of your professional, practice.
Yeah.
And it intertwines. I mean, that's all part of the dream, right? So that's awesome. Um, has there been anything in particular recently where you're like, man, like I really enjoyed that, like that, band, instrumental, whatever.
Yeah, I have so much that I listen to and so many I'm always building playlists, and so I may have to refresh my memory here. Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is um something that I wouldn't even say is a soundtrack, but something else that I use, and you'll find a lot of these kind of soundscape playlists on YouTube. Um, there are, I don't even know what you call them, just like 2, 3 hour mood pieces that people will create that I also find very helpful to be in the background if I know I'm going to have a long writing session and there's maybe a block of scenes that I don't have like a particular song for, but I want to vibe. Those are really, really good. Like recently for something I've been working on, there's a playlist, and it's not even really a playlist. It's kind of just one flowing soundscape, but it's called Blade Runner Bliss, and
Mm,
it's on YouTube. It is a little bit, it has a little bit of a cyberpunky vibe, but it's super subtle, and like there's a little, I think, background of almost like a little bit of rain in the background. So it evokes kind of like maybe a soundtrack of like a future city, like it on a rainy night. And what I've been writing recently that set the perfect backdrop of tone for me to write in for hours. And
yeah.
so that's probably the one most recently that I've really been enjoying. And there's a bunch of others. Once you find one or two like that, the algorithm picks up that you like it. And so
Right.
it'll start feeding you more stuff. So like there's one I think that's called Become the Batman. And it's like 2 or 3 hours of there's a style of music you could hear in the background a little bit like in Batman Begins, where he's like building himself up and growing, and it's a little bit
Oh,
it's
nice.
a little bit dark, but also like a I can do this vibe as well.
Right.
And so I've liked playing that one as I've been outlining certain things because it's just like it's understated, but also has this really like you can do it vibe about it, and so I've been digging that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, dude, that's you're speaking our language, like, you know, when Emma and I are, you know, cleaning up the house, or it's like, you know, kind of doing our she's doing the nightly chores or whatever. She throws on like medieval lo-fi, and like she's
Nice.
like, man, she's like, I feel like I'm closing down the tavern. I was like, yeah,
Oh, there's
yeah.
also one that I love that is, and I don't remember the exact name of it. I'd have to look it up, but it's essentially like 2 hours of, it's like pirate music or like like what you would expect to hear like on a Pirates of the Caribbean or something that style. But, um, yeah, there was a couple scenes actually for the book that I just recently finished. There was a couple of scenes that I just played that for hours and hours because it was set just the perfect tone. There's something so satisfying about finding the music that like fits exactly what you're trying to do.
Oh yeah, and it just again, it's just like kind of throwing fuel on the fire for whatever it is you work on, and when you have
Hmm.
that, it's like things start to make sense where it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, we recorded this album in like 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, because you were full of passion, and like you were able
Yeah,
to like really get that out and like make something that's really really good because it was full of that passion, and
yeah.
anything that can keep that passion stoked and burning without getting too hot so that you burn out, you know, I guess that's the balancing act, right?
For sure.
Let's pivot a little bit to, you know, the current movie scene. Obviously, you and I have talked a lot about movies and TV shows. You know, obviously Star Wars, The Mandalorian, variety of different things. Mystery Men, right? Uh, I've had, you know, this is a question I ask every guest, or I'm going to ask every guest. Like, do you feel the need to really go to the movie theater nowadays?
Not as much. Um,
Why do you think that is?
because there are fewer good movies out. Um, there are fewer movies that I think are worth it. Now, if there's a movie I think is worth it, I am thrilled to go to a theater. I love that experience.
Yeah.
Um, but there are fewer that I think are worth the effort, which is
And,
kind of a shame.
and yeah, I mean, it's like I couldn't even tell you like who like the most popular like actors and actresses. I don't even know half of these new um like people that are in the, you know, it's like I don't know anybody. Like it's I don't care about anybody because everyone I used to like to go watch doesn't really do it anymore. You know, they don't like they're not making movies like they used to anymore. And just kind of hearing about like what the process is like, it's like, yeah, like we're not making films the way they used to be made. Like there's a lot of I watched an interview with Nicolas Cage, and he was like, yeah, in the Flash movie, like, you
Yeah.
know, that wasn't even me. Like that was all like, you know,
Yeah.
CGI basically. And you know, he's like, I'm glad it showed off that suit basically, but you know, it's just kind of interesting. Like you look like you want to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I had a lot of thoughts swimming in my head. Um, well, for one, I just think they need to get their budgets under control. Um, I think that's part of why there were fewer movies that are worth going out for. It's because like now, because they're spending, $400 million on these things, they're taking fewer chances in making interesting stories. And yet at the same time, so the storytelling quality is taking a hit because they're just ticking boxes because they think that's what works. But at the same time, they keep losing money because people just don't want. I think people have gotten tired of your typical box ticking stories that 10, 20 years ago might have done fine, but now people are kind of wise to it. And
Yeah, I mean it's formulaic. Like
yeah.
you know, it's just not unique anymore. Um, and I think I'm starting to. Did I lose you?
Oh, I'm here. You're a
Okay,
little choppy on my end, but there I can you're back.
gotcha. We might have a storm coming through, but
Uh,
it's like, what was the last thing you said?
oh, just I think that it was, I was talking about their budgets where I think they're
Yeah,
just out of control. Yeah, and everything's just so formulaic because they don't feel like they can take any chances when they've
yeah,
dropped, nearly $500 million when you factor in all the marketing costs and things. But the irony of that is that they're not doing anything that people want to watch.
yeah. And I mean, I think I'm starting to kind of understand what Scorsese meant when he said that, like, um, Marvel movies were ruining, you know, ruining film. And while I don't know that Marvel movies are ruining film, I think that Marvel might have ruined the movie going experience because, um, like, which obviously is a big part of film in general, but like that's not the only. There's plenty of movies out there that didn't do well at the box office that were great movies, and they
Mhm.
you know they'll stand the test of time most likely. But like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the movie going experience just isn't what it used to be because it's just like it is very rare where I go to the movies that's not a Marvel movie and walk out and say like, "Wow, that was unique," or "Yeah, that was
Mhm.
you know that was like they're few and far between." So
So there is one that I'll shout out, and it's not like a genre movie at all, so it may surprise you. But I'm a sucker for a good mystery and a good whodunit, and also if there's some comedy in there, I'm in. There's a little movie called See How They Run that
mm,
I've been recommended to like everyone. Um, it's not like a big explosive movie at all. It's a quiet kind of low key whodunit comedy. It's a killer cast, um, and it's a lot of fun. And it's not something you're going to see any explosions on the screen, but and I wouldn't even say like, I mean, does it break all ground as far as like a mystery genre? No, but it does. But it does a pretty good kind of whodunit in a fun way that people don't really make anymore.
yeah,
And
I
it's
actually
on
went to the
Hulu now.
theater. Yeah, I say I actually went to the theater to see that,
Mhm.
and there were things about it that I did really enjoy. I really like Saoirse Ronan. I think she's really good. And I
It was
particularly
great.
liked her in that. Yeah, I particularly liked her in that role as well. So yeah, thanks for that shout out. That's good.
Sure, yeah.
So we can agree that the movie going experience is a bit stale at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just fewer and the problem with like the Marvel problem and the Star Wars problem and things is more that, people like to say that there's superhero fatigue. I don't see it that way. Um, I think people just lost faith because there were too many in a row that were not good.
Yeah,
Um, People were on board until they started throwing so much at the wall and most of it didn't stick. Um,
yeah,
I think some of the shows were part of the problem. I wonder if they diluted their creative team so much because they were trying to do so much that all the quality control kind of went out the window. But um, a couple of the shows were they should be embarrassed by. I hope they're embarrassed by. They were atrocious and embarrassing for them.
name
Um,
drop, name drop.
Secret Wars was not Secret Wars. What's that one? Secret Invasion
Yeah,
was horrible. She-Hulk was terrible. Um, those two, I mean, they should just pretend they don't exist. Um, and what we're hearing about them trying to do some course corrections on the Daredevil series, I hope that that's the case, and I hope that maybe that signals that the people who shepherded the series for the whole overall series for that decade and did some pretty amazing groundbreaking things. Hopefully that signals that they're trying to get back to form, maybe do fewer things but do them better. um I hope that's the case because I would love to be excited about it again. Because I never root for anything to fail. I want it to be great.
yeah,
um
same.
yeah, I mean,
They used
I
to take
want some more
time.
story.
Yeah,
Hmm.
they used to take time to really develop stuff, and it just feels like it's like nope, 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 like boom, 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 one right after the other, and yeah,
Yeah.
I can't keep up. I just don't care. Like I need time to care. You know what I mean? Like little buffer, please.
Yeah, and just stop just ticking boxes.
Yeah,
um
exactly.
yeah, and give us some unique things like uh, stuff that feels like real stories, like I really liked how um Winter Soldier felt like a political thriller that just happened to be a superhero movie. It
Yeah,
was about something other than, oh, here's superheroes.
right.
And it had something more to say. Um and I would love it if we got back to stories that feel just like they're respecting the audience more and trying to give them something really quality. And um I think a heavy dose of humility on the part of filmmakers and actors would really, really help.
Yeah,
Um, because these days it's like, um, anyone who gives even rightful criticism for something is immediately attacked by the people who worked on it, and
Yeah,
called
literally.
all sorts of insults and names. And it doesn't matter if what they say is legitimate. Um, and that's the exact wrong attitude to have. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's why there are some people who root for them to fail. It's because if they offer, even in good faith, any criticisms, the, I think it started out that, of course, there's always going to be some who are angry no matter what. But I think a segment of people who would, out of love for something, say, I like this, but this could be better. I didn't like that. And, we're trying to be part of the conversation. And they were attacked so hard that now they root for it to fail because they had very legitimate things that they had to say and they didn't do it badly. And yet they were dogpiled on. And so now, of course, they're angry. Um, and if the creative people involved would just have a little dash of humility and at the very least just keep their mouths shut and keep doing their work and let their work speak for them, then I think things would go a lot better for everybody. I mean, with authors, it's a considered a huge faux pas to engage with somebody who's negatively reviewed your book. You just don't do that. And people who have done that, who have like tried to hit back at people who criticize their books and things, have ended up ruining their own careers because you just don't do that.
Yeah.
And I like that as well. I think that, look, if somebody does not care for my book, it's really not my business. If you love it, great. But if you don't, okay, that's fine. Nothing is for everybody. I'm not going to get mad about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't take it personally, but I think I'm rambling a lot about this, but I've been thinking about it for a long time. I
This is a
think,
podcast. This is the place to do it.
yeah, I think a lot of Hollywood people are so used to the echo chamber in Hollywood where everybody just tells each other how great they are and how brilliant they are that they
Right.
can't stand actual criticism. And so they react with the worst possible ego and it just makes things worse. Whereas if they just didn't pay attention to it and just did their own thing, their life would go back to normal tomorrow. They'd never think about it again. And maybe they'd create some goodwill by going on to create something that somebody would like. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think the whole thing with especially like the Hollywood creatives engaging that way with the fan base on social media and things, it's a recipe for disaster and is one of the things that I think has led to the downfall of good creative storytelling. I mean, the bad guy in She-Hulk was essentially a Reddit poster. And it was basically someone online, that they were mad at, and it's like, yeah, you really let yourself get distracted from telling a good story just so you could clap back at some internet trolls, and it made
Yeah.
for a horrible story.
Yeah. And it's like, it's frustrating whenever there's people out there that are like, basically, like, if you don't like She-Hulk, you're a sexist. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to watch She-Hulk because it doesn't look good. Like, the CGI looks terrible. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to watch it. I have no interest in watching something that doesn't make me go, huh, like, that looks cool. I don't want to watch it just because it's there. And I
Yeah,
certainly,
and
like,
yeah, and
if you
Secret
love it,
Invasion.
I'm not telling you not to love it.
Yeah,
If you love it, I'm not gonna yuck your yum, as Ethan likes to say, right?
that's the thing. Yeah, the only thing I ask of people is to be realistic about whatever they like. If
Yes.
if you can acknowledge the faults in things that you like, or even if there's something you like that's not objectively not great, but you love it anyway, I'd never have a problem with that. I would
Yeah.
never criticize that. What I would criticize is somebody saying, I think this thing is awesome solely because they love it.
Right.
And, there are things that I like that I recognize are objectively not good, but I love them anyway.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and who cares? But yeah, the
Yeah.
point is be just because you like something doesn't make it well done. But just
Right.
a dose of realism, and I would never harsh someone's vibe if they want to enjoy something. I think that's great.
Yeah. Do your thing. And it's interesting, we're gonna talk about games, but you like video games, but you're not much of a gamer. Do you have anything to report in that front? Because I can segue us into our next topic very easily. So we can
I
just,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go.
Um,
No, you. You do it now.
oh, yes, sir. Uh, Yeah, I love video games, but as much as I'm trying to do, something has to go. And
Right,
I still play, but it's very much on a casual level. Um,
right,
because in addition to all the stuff that I'm writing and the recording stuff that I'm doing, I also want to make time to read. A good writer has to read. So um I end up dedicating a lot of what would go to games to books. Um, but occasionally I will be like, all right, I've done too much head work. I gotta stop and play something. Um,
right.
recently I had heard that they were able to resurrect Titanfall 2, so I got back into it. Man, that's still one of my all-time favorite games.
It's a great
Uh,
game.
yeah, and as getting back into a play, I was remembering why I loved it, and yeah, it's just a total blast.
Yeah, I mean, the movement is one of a kind. Apex doesn't really, I mean, it's super similar, obviously, but I don't know. Titanfall 2 is just, it's got a special vibe to it for sure. So
It does.
thank you for being, candid about your gaming time because we can just skip right on because we had mentioned at the top of the show that we wanted to talk about AI. And I
Yeah.
feel like, this transitions really well, from the movies and television scene. It's like a lot of people are upset that the Secret Invasion intro was created specifically or directly, from AI. Now, I don't know about you, but last time I checked, Marvel Studios had billions of dollars to spend on good content and good creative storytelling and good, like, actual, art, like assets created by real people. How do you let's just tackle that one subject? Like, how do you feel about Marvel Studios using? Well, let's put it this way. How do you feel about AI? How do I want to ask this? Let's do Marvel first. How do you feel
Okay.
about Marvel Studios using AI to tell a story?
Not for it. Um, and I think the reason that they ended up doing that, like with the opening credits, I'm sure there were plenty of individual people who knew that that was wrong. But when a company or a studio gets big enough that they operate like a machine, then everybody becomes a number. And so somewhere along the way, the machine, either willfully or not, whatever, forgot to factor in that they were cutting out actual human artists doing that. Um, because yeah, a big machine like that is inevitably going to chew up the human element. So was it bad? Yes. Was I surprised? No. And I think it'll keep happening. And I think it will happen unchecked unless the consumer pushes back on it.
Well said. Obviously, you're a creative. That's what you do for a living. A big thing that people talk about is like, oh, like you're a writer, AI is going to put you out of work. Like you're not going to have a job. Like, I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, what's your take?
Writers would be the last thing that AI puts out of a job. Um, as far as like as a class, AI can much more easily attack other types of art first. Um, I'm not saying that's good.
Right.
Um,
It's
but
just
we're
being
already,
objective about what's happening,
yeah, we're already seeing it with visual art. We're starting to see it with voiceover artists. Um, writing is going to be the hardest thing. Now, is there a lower common denominator of reader who will gobble up anything, even if a machine spits it out? Maybe. Um, but I think that's going to be the hardest thing for it to try to supplant.
is like to
Um,
actual, because having a good story has to evoke emotion. And
yeah.
last time I checked, AI has none. So
I
I
would
agree
say
with
for
you there.
writing, the biggest danger that writers may face is that, especially in the self-publishing space,
Right.
for because there already are tons of bad actors who are just trying to pump out like a novel a day that's written by ChatGPT. And what they might end up doing is diluting the market so badly that it's hard for the real good indie books written by real people to rise to the top. Um, so they could just muddy the waters so bad that it hurts that market. That I could see being a consequence. Replacing writers, no, I don't see that happening. Um,
Yeah.
because over a certain number of words, you're going to see the I mean, could you have a system like that pump out a page or something? Sure. And you may not be able to tell the difference in a page, but over the course of a book where you have a million and one creative decisions and where stylistically you would be able to see an author's style and or lack of style, it would become much more apparent um, that like a machine has tried to write it. Now you will have some writers who want to use AI assistants to, as kind of the lazy way, like they'll try to give it prompts and, start out with a template that it gives and then tweak it and whatever. I think that will end up bearing out. Um, Overall, as far as like being an author, I'm not worried about AI taking my work. Um, but I do think that it is something that has to be watched and pushed back on where you see it encroaching any kind of art. Um,
Do
and
you
go ahead.
do you think that there is a place for it?
Um, as far as a technical tool, sure. Um, and this is, but you're really stretching it to call this AI. But if you wanted to, like, put your manuscript in a thing and have it help look for, excuse me, punctuation and grammatical errors, that kind of thing. I've got no problem with using it that way. Because you've got I mean, it's glorified spell check. So if you're talking about that, which we've had for years, um, then I don't see it as a problem. Um, but when you're using it to try to replace artists, that's a problem. And when these companies are stealing mountains of copyrighted material to train their engines on, that is a major problem. Um,
Yeah.
and I find their defenses have been interesting because at first they were trying to claim that, oh no, we don't use any of the copyrighted material online to train our machines, and then when it was proven that that was false, it switched to, okay, yes, we are, but you shouldn't mind because this and this that because it's the same as if a person read your book, which is a total crock. Um, and then and now what I think at least I forget which one it is. There's at least one of those companies that is trying to push to get a legal exemption from copyright law so that it can essentially gobble up anything it wants because we're the new thing, so you should bow before us because we're tech bros. Um and that's ridiculous. Um yeah, the people who are advocating for AI to replace an artist are people who have never been able to create a good piece of art in their entire life. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think there's actually a quote I saved, but because I think it's so well put, but it applies here. I'll read it to you. So Chuck Wendig is an author.
Mhm.
Um, so he posted something and I thought, man, that's really beautifully put. He said, the allure of AI entices those people who fetishize ideas but dismiss the work. They're the people who tell writers, I'll give you the idea, then you write it and we'll split the profits. For them, the vision is everything and the work is just an annoying obstacle. But the work is everything. The work is how a thing happens, where it's made, where skill is put to work. AI in creativity is for people who have no skill, no work, no effort, no ethic. They just want to push a button. And I think that pretty much perfectly sums it up.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's it's so interesting because obviously I'm a different generation than a lot, than you and a lot of people on the show, and I am very against AI replacing people, to do X, Y, and Z. However, I have a little bit different mindset that there is a place for it for the person that's like, yeah, I have this idea and it's really ambitious and maybe I don't have the money to do it, but like I want to put out a song and I have an idea for cover art, but I don't really know any artists, or maybe I don't have the money to spend on whatever, So it's like, and this is something that's inevitably going to be part of my culture moving forward. So like for me, every song I've put out so far, like I'll use Dolly. Like I'll just come up with an idea and I'll it's like, hey, I need like a whatever, and do it. But you know if if I knew good artists, like if I knew someone that would be willing to help me, because that's the thing too, is it's interesting. Like I will reach out to someone that I do know how to, that does know how to draw or knows how to design something, and it's like, hey, I have this idea, can you do it? A lot of times, like, they're too busy. You know what I mean? And it's like, do you see a positive in that way, like for someone like myself who maybe has interests in specific things, but doesn't necessarily have the assets to fully execute like on a practical, like human level in every part of it, of the process.
Well, I would have a couple of questions. Any of the
Yeah.
engines that you use, I would ask how they were trained. Um, and for any of the work that you put out that has an AI element, I think that that should be identified. That there was an AI contribution to it. Um,
Yeah.
there are thousands of artists out there and more to be found, and
Right.
if for any medium, and it may take a little extra lead work. It may cost a little more money, so it may take longer to find them. Um, I think that's worth the investment in time and effort and money if if that's possible for you. But there are plenty of artists that are just beginning that have talent and potential that would probably give you a good deal because it gives them experience. They make a few bucks. And
Right.
um, will it take extra work to find them? Sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think that
Well,
that
yeah.
search is worthwhile, though.
Yeah, and I think too, like I've always kind of viewed it as like I will do every part of this job with AI myself until someone reaches out and says, or I make it known. It's like, yeah, all this was made with AI. If you know an artist that is, wanting to do a commission or is open for commissions and it can actually do good work, like yeah, like recommend them to me. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more creators that have, that do view AI as a tool. Because to me, it's one of those things like it is the next Skynet, like right, like it is Skynet. It's gonna take over the world, like regardless of if we want it to or not. Do you feel that way?
No, I don't agree. Are there certain aspects that are inevitable? Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Not AI. Yeah. Exactly.
but
Certain aspects that are inevitable
but
mainstays.
is it inevitable that it's going to gobble up all art and replace a lot of artists? So we might as well start using it for our art. I don't agree with that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a very interesting conversation because there is a lot of different viewpoints on it, and yeah, it's like if it was trained, there was, like whenever ChatGPT first became, used for the public was like a year or two ago. I would go in and it was relatively new, or I guess what was it, like about a year ago, something like that.
Hmm.
So I would, give it prompts like, hey, give me something, or rather, you basically treat it like Google. Like, hey, give me something or rather in the style of so and so, right? So then right there, that kind of like raised a red flag for me. It was like, this is actually really good what it just spit out. Like I could see this being a problem. And then sure enough, not even a couple months later, George R. R. Martin and all these other authors are suing
Yeah.
ChatGPT and these companies because yeah, people were doing the exact same thing that I did, and it's not like you go to it at first. It's just a toy, like just something to play with, like
Yeah.
oh yeah, whatever. And I'll just be honest with you, like I use ChatGPT every day, not as a means to replace my creativity, but a means to organize it, if that makes sense. Because you have those chats that save. It's like, hey, here's some ideas I'm thinking of. Kind of like what you were saying, like these templated things. Like it remembers like the patterns and templates, and it's like, oh well, helping like keep things consistent, basically for organization. But
Yeah.
it
And
is
so you're using it as a technical tool, which I don't
exactly
really,
right. Yeah.
which in a vacuum, not knowing what, certain ones are trained on, I don't necessarily have a problem with.
Right.
Because like, is there are there are non-AI algorithms that can do very similar things.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'm not against, all tech doing anything. Clearly,
Right.
I write all my stuff on, word processors and things. And
Right.
um, but yeah, I don't think it's. I think the takeover of art with AI is only inevitable if we allow it to be inevitable. Um, and
I think that's a very optimistic take. Like I would too love to believe that. It's just like kind of seeing what's been done already. I'm just like how can we as the consumers and, these people,
I'll
like
tell
how
you
can
how, by
yeah, go
not
for it.
by not consuming and not
Yeah.
giving money to the things that are produced with its help. And
Yeah.
if they're only going to go people like that are only going to go where the money is, especially the easy money. And if enough people didn't give them money because they relied on AI to create it, they would stop doing it, or at least they would be pushed to the margins,
Yeah.
and to the sides because yeah, because it's no longer easy money.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, now do are enough people discerning consumers that that's going to happen? Not necessarily. Um,
Yeah, I mean I just think
but that
about
that
yeah.
doesn't mean you give into it though.
Yeah, exactly. And to me it's like we spent this whole podcast talking about how the stories that we're consuming these days just aren't that good. To where it's like I'd rather make something myself, right? And uh collaborate with other individuals and like just work my own mind. So hopefully we can potentially see a new generation that feels the same way. Like everything sucks. Like I'm not gonna like no. And I part of what makes me feel like it's inevitable is more and more people are wanting to stay home to watch their to consume their movies, and I feel like that's only going to become more and more of a mainstay in our culture as time goes on. Like I think about like Gen Z and the next generation. Like what's the next generation after Gen Z going to be like? Like it's just really interesting like to think about all these things and how the world keeps moving and the technology is moving at an alarming rate. And yeah, I mean there's lots of conversations to be had, and I'm always down for anyone listening. I'm always down to talk about AI because I do like to use it. um, I do think it's kind of scummy to have the capital and the time to hire like talented artists that can put out a really good product. Um, and you just take the easy way out, like whatever. But anyways,
The thing is,
uh,
our artists have been targeted and taken advantage of by the business world, for
right,
however many years the two have existed.
right,
And it's hard enough already for someone who wants to make their living in any kind of artistic endeavor to do it. And for these tech bros to set their sights once again on
yeah,
stealing work and money from artists to make a quick buck, they risk destroying an entire generation of artists.
yeah,
Um, and then when they only have the algorithm to create their art, that will be no art left because it doesn't satisfy anybody.
yeah.
And so
I
I'm
think
all, I'm
yeah,
all about giving artists, the ability to continue creating their art.
yeah, right. And I think I just like to think down. Me, I like to go down the hall of consequence. It's like, well, if we live in a world where AI art is the mainstay, or one of the biggest mainstays, like actual skill might become antiquated or even obsolete, to the newer generations. Like they may not even view it as being something impressive that you can play an instrument or that you can paint something yourself by hand. Like they may not even see a need for it, which is kind of sad to think about. But you know, whereas you're an optimist and it's like we're gonna fight the man. We're not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like I don't want
Well,
it to happen.
if you go down the road, I mean, go down the road a few decades, let's say AI wins the war or whatever, and
Right.
there's no more real artists, then there's nothing else for the algorithm to steal from, which means that it just has to keep remixing the stuff that it already stole, which means that art is essentially dead and self-iterative. Um, so that definitely can't happen.
Yeah.
It-
Right.
it- so I just, whether it's inevitable or not, doesn't really change how I think we should
Yeah,
not how
handle
to
it.
it.
Yeah, there you have it. Spoken from a professional artist himself, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's pivot from AI and movies, and what you've been up to. Thank you for giving us, thank you for that, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Sure.
To kind of close out the show, I want to talk about mile 135, your podcast. I remember when you called me about this. You know, you were telling me you were going to be reviewing restaurants, and it's really interesting because I too love food. Um, and my wife and I, that's one of the main things that we really like connected over actually was food because she had been all over the place, and tried all kinds of different food that I had never, she would tell me about it. And it's like she knew these weird places in her town and vice versa. And
Nice.
we'd always, like we just bonded over food. So I always love talking to, another foodie. And I have to say, I love Mile 135. Like, I think
Oh,
it's
thank you.
a really nice bite-sized show. You have what, 7, 8 episodes out now by this point? How many?
Yeah, 7 or 8. I took a little bit of a break just because I've got some writing stuff that I'm spending time on, but I have a backlog of episodes that I'm going to be recording. It is definitely still going, and I'm just taking a break to get some other machines up and running. But yeah, so I've got that, and I've got dozens more planned.
Yeah, nice. There you have dozens.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've got a
Nice.
lot. And the more places I go to, the more it grows. So yeah, so the basic concept for anyone listening who hasn't heard it, so I do lots of traveling as an author as well. Um, I travel anyway because I'm kind of a travel nut as well, but I also do a lot of traveling to because I write children's books to go to schools to do school presentations for kids and book signings and things. And um, whenever I go to a city, I inevitably want something interesting to eat or a cool coffee shop to try. So I do lots of research and then I pick stuff to try while I'm in town. Um, and then I would always tell my friends about the stuff I tried. And then it finally hit me, why don't I just put this in podcast form? Um, so in the intro, I say I'm an author and a traveler and a foodie. And so whenever I travel to do author stuff, I try interesting restaurants and coffee shops. And so those are the ones that I talk about on the show. And each show is usually spotlighting one place. I try to alternate between different cities that I've been to, and alternate between coffee shops and restaurants, and yeah, just talk about the highs and lows. I mainly like it to be a positive show, so I like to celebrate the great places. I will occasionally pepper in one that failed, but I want overall it to be a positive show.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's like we talk about this all the time. It's like, yeah, we can only consume so much of our friends' content. It's like it's very rare you actually have friends that consume everything that you put out. Like it just doesn't
Oh
happen.
yeah,
But
nor
what
do
I
I ever
have,
expect that.
yeah, I mean, but it is nice. Like I appreciate how from the very beginning, you have thumbnails for each place. To differentiate. Like this is its own separate story, its own separate thing, on this podcast feed. And I really really like it. Now tell me, what does mile 135, what does that even mean?
Man, I agonized about the show name. I went far and wide just trying to think of the craziest stuff, and I wanted something that would suggest travel, but also one that suggested food as well. So if you look on the little show art, it looks like a road, and then there's a mile marker, a mile marker
Right.
for like the 135. So I envision that road as kind of evoking the whole travel aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But 135 is the temperature of a perfectly cooked medium rare steak, and yeah.
Ah.
So I put what I think is a number relating to food with something relating to travel. And also something that just rolled off the tongue real easy. And was not so out there, just something that was easy to remember. I iterated a lot before came to that one, but when I thought of it, it was almost instant like, yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. It does roll off. Because it was one of those things. It was like whenever I was putting notes together for the show, I was like, "What is this pod?" And I was like, "Mile 135." It's like, "Is that it?" And then like literally when I went to go search, I was like, "That is it." Like, yeah, I got it. And I was pleased to find that there had been lots of episodes added from the ones that I had listened to,
Hmm.
because I can respect how, we have lots of ventures here at Wannabe Critic
Yeah.
Productions, as you know, and Highland Productions, and it's like it's really difficult to make something consistent, especially when you have a lot of really good, what you feel like are really good ideas or unique
It takes
ideas,
time.
or and it's time and patience, and you
Yeah,
know,
each episode,
can
you well know, each episode is only like 10 minutes long, but it takes me, it takes me hours to do each one, and that's
right,
writing the script, and then it's recording, and then it's all the post production and stuff, and
right.
you know,
Oh yeah, it's especially like but there's so much satisfaction that comes out of putting all that together yourself and
absolutely.
really being happy with, I really do feel there should always be kind of that double edge. Like, you should be able to be like, you know what, that was a good show or that was a bad show, and then know what you might want to change, different, change. Like, I'm all about like progressing and like not being tied to a strict format and being able to kind of just ebb and flow as needed. And it's like that's interesting for the listeners too, because it's like, yeah, you want to have a theme and you want to have it like be looking at the best it can be, but if little elements change here and there, like, I don't know, audiences can be intrigued by that, I think. So it's nice to
Hmm.
see that it's still going. Um,
Yeah, I got lots of plans, and and I think the occasional bad review might be the spice that goes on top of like the regular episode, because I love celebrating the really good ones. I really do. But
right.
and there's even some mediocre ones that I just won't do an episode on because they're not bad, but I don't want to dunk on them or anything like that. I just it's not what I want the show to be. But occasionally I'll try a place that offends me. And like oh man, there's a place, I'm not going to spoil much, but there's a place that I tried in Montana that I left angry. And
Uh,
I'm gonna pile drive that place when I do an episode. Uh,
oh man.
um, yeah, that one's, I'm not sure when I'm gonna do it, but it's coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I can't wait, listeners. Like, you guys will have to check it out too, and write in and let Ryan know how he's doing.
Yeah.
I think inevitably when you're trying to do like a concept, because this is kind of a very not this is a unique podcast idea. I think I don't know if there's many people doing. I'm sure there's people doing it, but not to this. Not exactly like what you're doing. But like when you were like kind of conceptualizing the show and kind of like thinking about how you wanted it to hit, because I mean it has a very specific vibe to it, and I think that's intentional. So like whenever you were kind of conceptualizing it, what were some things that like you were kind of trying to keep in mind as you were building it creatively?
Well, actually, if you don't mind, before I haven't gotten to talk to a lot of people who listen to the whole show outside of, family. So I'm curious how it hit you, because I want to know if what I'm going for actually is what's coming across. And then I'll tell you
Yeah,
exactly what I planned.
yeah. I mean, to me, it's I really feel like I'm being like I feel like I'm there. Like, you give surrounding details about where you're at, what you're eating, like if you have any past experiences, if it's your first time, that type of stuff. And like it, to me it feels like I'm catching up with that friend who's always doing stuff and has interesting stories to tell, is what it feels like. And it's around my favorite thing, which is food. So I think to me, I may be overstepping, but like if there are foodies out there, I personally believe that mile 135 would be like if food's your shtick. Like I'm like a mid range foodie. Like I can appreciate the finer things, but like if you put a filet mignon prepared by Gordon Ramsay and uh you know a cheeseburger prepared by Gordon Ramsay or whatever, I don't know which one I'm gonna pick because it's gonna be depend on what kind of mood I'm in, right?
Mhm.
Like that's I don't think there's like an objective way to be a foodie, but I can appreciate both sides. I'm not all like bougie with it or anything like that. But to me, it seems like a quintessential thing that you'll want to check in on. You know, it's been one of those things like I want to get back to Mile 135 and hear like what you've been doing. In fact, I'll tell you, whenever I listened to the first episode, I just kind of thought to myself, like, yeah, I could binge this. Like, if there were 10 episodes, like, I was just waiting to get to the next one. It's perfect for, like, if you have a commute, you know, like in the city or anything like that. It's like perfect little bite sized, you know, and I really liked it. Like, I mean, am I ticking any boxes that you were going for, I guess?
Well, yeah, first of all, I appreciate all the kind words. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, so I wanted it to be easily digestible. I didn't want it to any episode to overstay its welcome. And so when I've said what I want to say, show's over. And that's if it's 5 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever. It's just,
Right.
uh, um, yeah, I'm not looking to put in filler. And I do think there aren't that many short form podcasts, and plenty are lend themselves more to long form anyway. But this isn't an interview or things like that. It's just one guy talking.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's just as someone who's done it before. That's the biggest thing. It's like, you know, I had a little bit of trepidation because I know how difficult those one man shows can be, but you nailed it because you didn't allow yourself to ramble. It was like you were writing a story for me about what you did. Like I could very easily place myself in what you were doing, you know.
oh,
So
I'm glad. And I do sort of, I definitely apply some writing craft to it. Yeah, kind
totally,
of
you
you
can hear it.
start out setting the scene, you wade into the experience. You each one kind of has its own theme, kind of a little like a particular emotional aspect, like how did this place make me feel? Um, and then summing up and giving final impressions and things. And so yeah, I wanted it to be something that is sort of like comfort food that you're taking in and enjoying, but also feels like a little pop of adventure.
Yeah.
Which is why I chose the theme music that I did, and that's another thing that I kind of not agonized over, but I put a lot of work into choosing that exact like intro music because I wanted something that's going to evoke the right vibe. And to me, that little 30-second music intro has kind of a let's go on an adventure together vibe to it.
Yeah, it
Which
very much does. In
what I,
fact, feature me. You play that music. You do it now. You play the man's show right now. You hear me? So we're
in the
playing it
background
right
right
now.
now.
In the background
Cool.
right now. There's your voice right there.
I'm Ryan. Don't you love post production?
You really do. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
um, but yeah, and for one thing, it was a good outlet for me. I love podcasts. I love podcasting. And for years, I just never did my own show because I never felt like, well, this is a concept that feels like me and isn't done to death. And
Right.
so I was very excited, and I'm still excited to have a concept that I don't think that many people are doing, um, or a mix of concepts, like an author talking about food. Um, and I like food writing anyway, so I like talking about the experience, and um, so I just yeah, I want to continue doing that. It's fun for me. I like sharing the experiences. Um, and man, there are so many really cool places out there, and sometimes in very unlikely corners of the country, and sometimes even the world. And so being able to share those is just really fun.
Well, and I think too, there's an element of tragedy with food too. Like there's nothing like when you learn one of your favorite places you've eaten, or like maybe a place you really loved. It's like they closed.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, it's kind of the tragedy with that industry is you have to be good or else you will not make it. You will like you if you're in the food industry, you better have another business because like and or hope that your food it really is that good because people go out all the time and it can be amazing food. So, you know,
Yeah, it can be
I
hard to make a
appreciate
mark.
right, yeah, exactly. So it's like I think you're kind of hitting all the boxes. You know, it's like if you disliked a place, you gave good reasons as to why. You know, so ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Ryan Dalton, author, aka podcaster for Mile 135. Go check him out. Go check out the podcast. It definitely has the Wannabe Critics endorsement. I'm a fan. I don't want to say a big fan because I haven't consumed more than 2 episodes. I think you sent me the first 2. dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a blast, and yeah, we can't wait to hear, what's next. I mean, can you give us a hint or a taste of anything that you're working on right now that you're excited about, or something we can expect from you in the
Well,
future?
we are just
Anything of
about.
any
I did
kind?
finish another book, so we are going to be shopping that around. I can't really talk about what it is. I can tell you off pod. I'll tell you, but I just don't want to announce anything officially, just because we still, have to go through the process. Uh, Business stuff, yeah.
Business stuff.
There are some other things. Okay, so this last adventure, which came out about a year and a half ago in paper in hardcover. Um, this year, actually, this fall is getting a paperback printing as well. So if you're a paperback fan, there will be a paperback edition of this last adventure coming.
That's fantastic. I was literally wondering. I was like, man, it's kind of crazy that this is the only way to consume this, And it's like, I remember I was going to the beach and I had your book and I was like, I'm gonna read that on the beach, but I didn't
Yeah.
because I didn't want to get sand in it. So that might end up being the
Oh yeah,
way. Is
yeah.
there a
There's
digital
on all the
version
digital
of this last
platforms.
adventure yet?
There's the hardcover, all the digital versions, and then soon there will be paperback. It's a particular nice milestone for me, because a book is only going to get a paperback run if the hardcover run sold well, and the hardcover run did pretty well. So that's a proud moment to have the paperback coming.
Amazing.
So um,
Applause.
uh,
You put it there
yeah.
now. You hear me? Yeah, dude. I honestly like creative to creative. Like I could not be happier for you. Like it brings me nothing but joy to see my friends pursuing things they're passionate about, seeing their version of success. That doesn't have to be a dollar. It's a feeling that you feel. And every time I talk to you, you're always just exuding that. So I got to give you props because, you know, kept obviously you haven't gotten here by yourself, but you kept yourself going and kept believing hard enough and working hard enough. And here at Wannabe Critic Productions, we're really happy and we're really
Hey, I
proud of you.
appreciate
So
that. Thank you.
congratulations, man. It's
I,
awesome.
I I don't know if I mentioned this at the risk of sounding pretentious. The book did actually win an award last year. Um, yeah.
Really?
It came out in the latter part of 2022, and then so in 2023. So there's a journal called School Library Journal, that is kind of the authority for librarians all across the country for books that they're going to look at and everything. And mine was included as a best of 2022 in yeah, just a small selection of middle grade books that came out in 2022. So yeah, that felt really good. uh,
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like to be recognized critically in any way, for something that you've worked on, it's like it's really. I mean, most artists I think can come off as pretentious because it's like I didn't make it for you anyways, but I'm glad you like it. Like I believe it's good too. That's why I made it. But like there's no way to sound like you will always sound like a jerk if you say that. But for other people to see that you're being recognized by the authority, right? That's got to feel pretty good because
it
it's
does
like I
feel
told you
good.
guys,
It
like I
does
could
feel
do
good
this,
in a way. And
and here
you
we
don't
are.
do this to chase awards by
Yeah,
any means. The work, yeah, the work itself is
right.
rewarding,
You shouldn't.
but the award was nice.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's just a kind of a cherry on top type deal, right? Like, kind of reminds me of like Dave Grohl was talking one time about how for their third record, there's nothing left to lose. Is the one with him, and he's turned around. He's got the FF on the back of his neck that he's got tattooed for Foo Fighters, and they made that whole record in like a basement, in Virginia or something, I think, and in the documentary Back and Forth, he talks about how he's like, I just remember getting up on stage and looking at everyone in those like tuxedos and crap, like, and we're winning this Grammy award, like for best rock album, and he's like, and it's a super. He's like, he said he was particularly proud of that album because of how laid back it really was, and to this day, it really is one of my favorite albums by the Foo Fighters because it has a constant chill vibe even whenever it goes hard. And, like, this is kind of a little side review just for the listeners, they're out there, like, side review. If you've never listened to it, go for it. But what you're talking about right now is making me think of whenever he, was talking about accepting that speech. Cause it's like, he was just doing what was in his heart, and it got recognized by people that are in a completely different realm, that do care about the lavish. Like, he's an artist. He goes to he went to the party because he was nominated. A lot of people go to those things as jokes, It's like, right, it's like they view their art as being just as that. It's like, when did it become a mainstay to make pageantry out of the art that we create? Why can't we just create it, put it out there, and just be depressed like every other, unknown artist, right? Anyways, but side tangent. Well, Ryan, thank you again so much for coming on the show, man. It was great to see you, and hopefully we can have you on again
that'd be great.
On a future project, in the future. So, is there anything you want?
It was great catching up, and
sorry,
thanks for having me, and let's do it again.
Definitely. Is there anything you want to tell people?
Check out This Last Adventure in hardcover now, but if you're a paperback person, look for it. I believe it's coming out September in paperback. RyanDaltonWrites.com. Ryan Dalton on Twitter. Ryan Dalton on Instagram. If you're a book fan, you can drop me an email to RyanDaltonWrites@gmail.com or author@RyanDaltonWrites.com. I threw a lot of things at you there, but right.
You did. Yeah. You'll have to rewind, listeners. So, well, thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Ryan for coming out here today. He came such a long way to make the show happen. We're really grateful for him making an appearance. And stay tuned for our next episode. Not sure who we're going to have next. Actually, I do. Next episode, we're going to be having a girl and her phone on as a guest. Her name is Savannah. What is her last name? I can't remember. She's on Instagram as a girl on her phone. She has been shooting, weddings and things like that, strictly just using her iPhone. And people are kind of like I'm fascinated by it. Like, I've been very inspired, so I'm really happy to have her on the show. So tune into that next time. We'll definitely get to talk about that. So thanks so much again. And without further ado, or not without further ado, what should I say?
That's all, folks.
What's a good way to do it? Thank you. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And until next time, here's this. Hey there. Whether you've stumbled upon me through my music channel, my gaming channel, or perhaps a podcast, I genuinely appreciate you taking a moment to chill out here. I've got a real passion for what I do, and, there's just something about creating that keeps me coming back for more, and I really don't think that's ever going to change. I'm really stoked to share this journey with all of you. If you want to see all the various projects that I'm associated with, all those links are down in the description down below. Also, you can check out my website where I like to write stuff as well. I put a lot of sweat and love into this because I genuinely enjoy it, and it's not just work to me, it's a real passion. So once again, thank you so much for showing up today. It really means a lot, and I'm going to finish playing myself out here. See you next time.